Good evening. Claire has just informed me that my volume was broken. Hopefully it now isn't. Can you hear me? Am I coming through? Huzzah. Yeah, I was just being silent for the extra drama. So what I was saying, apparently to myself, was that last time I was looking at the ship, I was building out all of the structural framework pieces, which is all of this stuff here. And that needs doing consistently for the rest of the ship. So just little things like doing the lips here and chamfering those edges and fixing that gap. Little things like that. Why is there a gap there? That is in fact a good question. Something's got nudged somewhere. So ultimately, all of this area here all needs to be built out with wall sections and support structure and all that good stuff, so that we can start building wall panels for it. This is C deck that I'm doing right now. Oh yeah, and I was building what will be a staircase as well. Okay, so all these pieces have the correct edges on them. Got a staircase to build over here, and some floor to build over there. Yeah, the vast majority of this is all done as components. So, like this little piece here, for example. If I go into that, you can see that if I highlight that, that is now highlighted absolutely everywhere, because that's all a copy of the same component. So if I make any changes to this one piece, it changes everywhere. Otherwise, yeah, it would be insane to do each and every one of these manually. That would be all kinds of a nightmare. Also got a bit of an alignment issue here, it needs fixing. So when I've been building the ship, I've been sticking to some set design rules so that the gaps between each panel is consistent. So from here to here should be 250. Yeah, so that's essentially 2.5 meters for that panel, and everywhere should also be 2.5 meters. So from there to there should be 2.5. Yeah. So those ones are correct, and then these ones are likely wrong. So if we just measure these. So that is 250, but in the wrong place. And that's probably to do with this corner piece here. Yeah, each piece, so like this, for example, if I just copy that up, that there is one framework piece as far as Unreal's concerned. So that's the only thing that Unreal sees, and then that's copy pasted within the engine. So just making sure that I've got some consistent distances across here. What I'm trying to do is make sure that I've always got half a meter clearance on any corner piece as well. So yeah, so it's a 50 centimeter curve, which is consistent pretty much everywhere. So this should also be a 50 centimeter curve. Yeah. And then from there back should be the 50. So that one's 62, which means this one's probably the 50. Yeah, near enough. Which means that this side is correct and this side is wrong. So these ones are going to need nudging a little bit. Yeah, having these set design rules seems a little insane at face value, but when it actually comes to building something consistent, it really helps to have sort of set distances that you stick to, so that you know if you're building a wall or a corner piece, you know that you're going to have the same measurements across the board, and you don't have to sort of think about it too strongly. These should all be lined up now. Yeah, so both Claire and myself are still recovering from the lurgy, so you'll hear Claire coughing away in the background, I'm sure. Thanks, Peter, that's appreciated. And thank you, Jack. Yeah, so this is the stuff that's going into the next dev build, along with some of the new sensor stuff. It's all a bit pulled apart at the moment, because if I bring up, let's see, we want F deck walls and top, and then we want G deck walls and top. So right now, you can see we've got this gap between the decks, because I've expanded the betwixt deck separation by 50 centimeters, so that we've got a 100 centimeter gap for utilities and things. That means that every deck now has a gap, so that all needs fixing. For the most part, it's just a case of just extending the walls up, but it's all just jobs that need doing. So one thing I just need to remind myself is that not all of these pieces are equal. Or are they? Because you got that piece there, and that piece there. And I think they're actually identical. Yeah, they should be. And I think it's these two that are different, because this is going to be a separate area here. So the idea here is going to have a seating area, just like a breakout area, a nice spiral staircase with a tree coming up the middle, nice glass ceiling above. So that should look pretty cool once that's all in. But that does mean that these two pieces are going to have a different wall along here than this one, because this one's got a corridor and this one's going to be open. Yeah, SketchUp does struggle with all the layers turned on. I did at one point make it so that every deck was a separate SketchUp file, but then it's difficult to line things up when you do it that way, so I'm just managing it through layers instead, and it's not too bad. You do get issues where if you want to zoom in on something really close, like that happens, because the distance between the object and the origin point is quite large, so you lose the ability to zoom in close on things. So if you're trying to line up detail, you end up with this horribleness going on. But I try and minimize putting anything outside of this space to stop that from happening. Okay, I think what I'll do, let's see if we can get some of this cut through at the edge here. So that means we need the D deck. Where's the top of that gone? I'll need to check this in engine a minute. Right, so there's the hole that we've got cut through. And then we need... Okay, so that piece needs chopping through. And so does the framework. Yeah, I could do a double staircase. It's all kind of about how much space we've got to work with. I'm trying to keep it so that the corridor width is consistent, even if it's an open space. So like down here, the gap between here and here is the same as here and here. So you've got that sort of consistent walkway. And when you've got carpets down with like the edging and everything, that'll all sort of match scale-wise. I don't recall why I went all the way to the back there. Am I missing a piece? That is the question. Or is that this? Part of the issue of copy pasting a lot of it is that obviously I'm working on this area, but the actual piece that goes over there is exported from here because it's copy pasted in a circle. So I just kind of need to be mindful of which bit goes where in engine. Because I imagine that is probably copy pasted in a circle. So these should all be the same. Yeah, they're all the same mesh. And then these should also be the same physical mesh. Yeah, okay. Which means that I need a copy of this, which I can edit. So if we take those, get rid of that. Yeah, I might rethink the width of this staircase, because I'm not too happy with it going so close to the back wall. I shall experiment with that in a sec. Liam, yes, the ship's full of bulkheads, so we do have an issue with the main stairwells, in that the stairwells themselves can't be isolated per deck, but we'll be addressing that for the Pathfinder class, the next ship. This ship's designed as a proof of concept anyway, so in universe this is an experimental vessel, so it's nice that we'll have some lessons learned from its design. One of those being, we need a better way of blocking off staircases. Like on like in every corridor section, you've got these bulkheads which you can close, and that will be across every deck. So you can isolate corridor rings individually, but not the whole stairwell on a per deck basis. So you'd have to isolate the entire stairwell all at once. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll make this a unique component. So it means that any changes I make to this will now no longer propagate to the other one. You are also a component, so you need to be unique. And you are also a component, so you also need to be unique. Just trying to work out why that's all the way up there, but... Oh, of course, yeah, it's because I got a sunken floor bit now. That's why that doesn't add up. That's fine. So just for now, I'm going to borrow that. Just cut that bit out. Get rid of that. Just chop that as well. Oops. Okay, that's us cut through there, and I'll do a circular piece of framework as well once I'm happy with exactly how big that's going to be. Yeah, so all the bulkheads will have manual opening levers. You'll be able to open up a panel next to it, and there'll be a way of releasing the door. Yeah, so the reason we've got this separation both between decks and inside the walls here like this is because this is where all the cables and pipes and things are going to be running, and you'll have access panels on here to access those things, and yes, they will break and need to be repaired. Moon's in. SketchUp exports quite cleanly to Unreal. I'm only exporting the raw object files, so it's literally just the raw geometry I'm exporting. The UV mapping, the materials and things, I do all of that in Unreal, including things like face weighting normals and that sort of stuff. So it's literally just the base geometry that I'm doing in SketchUp. Everything else happens in Unreal. And it doesn't need any retopo work because SketchUp generally produces quite clean geometry. And if you look at a piece like this, for example, the geometry is clean. It's not messy. It can be, but I tend to keep it as clean as I can. So that doesn't need any adjustment inside Unreal. Echamp, thank you for the $5. Godspeed to you, your team, and your excellent game. Thank you. We certainly seem to be getting somewhere. We actually had a really nice meeting with a couple of guys from Epic Games today, and they've been offering some help and assistance in bringing the game to fruition, and essentially saying if there's anything they can do to help, they're happy to help us along the way, give us some guidance, put us in contact with useful contacts in the industry, and that's brilliant. It's lovely having people like Epic offering their help for us. I think that's really, really good. Oh yeah, don't worry, we're not going to be doing anything like an Epic Store exclusive or anything like that. Yeah, really, they just genuinely want to help. They said that it excites them when they see people doing interesting things with Unreal Engine, and the first thing they asked is, how are you building a galaxy in Unreal Engine, like a whole galaxy? Because obviously Unreal Engine's not designed for that, so it was nice to have a techie chat about how we're actually doing that and how we're sort of crowbarring an entire galaxy into what is essentially a first-person shooter engine. So that was that was a really fun chat to have. The planetary scanning, I've done a bit more to that. So if we look here, I've cleaned up a lot of the functions and sort of sanitized the data flow essentially and where all that comes from. So I've gone through things like doing a lot of commenting work and kind of refining where data is coming from and going to, and I've been doing a lot of commenting on the code because it's getting to that point now where it's becoming quite unwieldy, that there's so much going on with the sensors. It was time to take a step back and get it fully documented, make sure that everything's polished and smooth, which I tend to do from time to time. I think Star Citizen uses Lumberyard, doesn't it? Ah, right, okay. I didn't realise that. Okay, so this piece of framework here is a series of crew quarters, which obviously we can't have here anymore. So that needs to be changed. More to know, yeah. It's amazing that we've hit the planetary landing stretch goal. I'm like massively excited about getting into that, and it's taking all of my self-control to not just throw myself into that and abandon the ship and just work on planetary landings. But we have a reasonably well-defined roadmap of how we're going to do this and what order we're going to do it in, and planetary landings are quite far down the line. There's a lot of other more important things we need to get done first. But yeah, because of how we manage the ship, our ship interior is static and has to be static, because if you think about the sheer amount of complexity in the ship interior, there's no way you could move that physically within the engine. So we have to move space around the ship in order to do spaceflight. But because of that then means we can't move a planet, which is arguably going to be even more complicated with even more stuff. We can't move that around the ship. So there has to be this change of scope, where when you enter the planet's environment, the shuttle has to be the thing that's moving and the planet has to be the thing that's static. So that's why we need this scope change / transition as you enter the surface environment. It's kind of unavoidable with the way we're doing it in the engine. Yeah, that Star Engine trailer video was amazing. That completely blew my mind. It's incredibly cool and exciting to see, and yeah, it's definitely a benchmark within the industry as to, you know, something to aspire to. You know, fortunately, you know, we use Unreal Engine, which means that a lot of the tech we have access to is that good in terms of, you know, visual fidelity and graphics and things. Okay, so that's the crew quarters there. This needs to be a corridor here. And I think what we'll do is we'll just have this as an open area. The background music is just a YouTube stream from Lofi Geek. They do sort of royalty-free lo-fi, and it's just something to put on in the background so you don't have to listen to some silence while I'm pondering things. And so the way the rooms are constructed, so again, if you look at this here, so this is the framework for the crew quarters. This is an old one, so it's going to be updated more than this. So if you imagine this, but with sort of this detail where you've got like the floor attachment pieces and brackets and bolts and things, so all the full interior on the framework side is going to have attachment points all over it, you know, like in here. These are very old simplistic ones, so these will be updated to the new ones. Now that we're using nanites, we don't have any concern over poly count, so like, you know, these edges can be smoothed off and these can be made more high poly without any performance deficit, which is another, you know, plus of using Unreal Engine. But then the interior of the rooms, all the wall panels will be separate objects because they'll be destructible. So you could shoot the wall panel and it's going to break and reveal the framework behind it. So in terms of how this is actually done in Engine, we export this piece as a solid framework block, and then we have sockets on the framework bits, and those sockets define where a wall panel's attached to. So if we look here, for example, and I turn on the socket attachment, so here is a wall panel, which is a separate piece, and that snaps into place like that. So when I'm actually positioning wall panels, all I need to do is import this object, and if we look at that, so this is the solid object from SketchUp. So this is literally base geometry from SketchUp, textured within Unreal Engine, and then with sockets added to it in Unreal Engine, so all these sockets here. And then the wall panels have a corresponding socket, and that's how they just snap together like that, which makes the construction of the ship much quicker to do, because you're not having to sort of, you know, get in there and, you know, line things up pixel by pixel. Assuming you get the socket in the right place, they do just snap together. Yeah, just like Space Lego. And I spent my entire childhood playing with Lego, like, consistently, so this is very much a familiarity to me. Yes, there will be mining in the game. So, like, say this panel breaks. So this is completely smashed, and that's it, gone now. So let's say you've just got some tatters of plastic hanging off these bolts. In order to replace this panel, you would have to go and 3D print another one. And the raw materials for the 3D printers is what you would retrieve through mining. The ship will have like resource bins of different elements, and you process the rocks and extract it into its various elemental bits, and then store that separately. Dinosaur, yes. So this structure, so the actual framework of the ship, at least to begin with, won't be destructible. So whilst all these individual panels will be destructible, completely to the point where they're literally just bits hanging off, including the floors. All the floors will be destructible and everything, but the actual framework itself won't. And there's two reasons for that. One, they're used as occluders. So for performance reasons, these are the things which are occluding the meshes. So these meshes here don't run any occlusion checks. So they're not used to occlude other objects within the game. And the reason that is to reduce CPU load on doing occlusion checks. So by having a solid piece like this taking care of occlusion, it means we're only having to check small number of objects within the game to see whether or not things should be rendered. And once we do hull breaches, we need to do it in such a way where we retain that occlusion performance without sort of putting holes in the walls. But yeah, it's something we'll look at. We do want to do hull breaches at some point. But yeah, it's just a case of, how do we go about doing that in a way that's performant? Yeah, you'll be able to break things down. So this wall panel, if it's in pieces, you'll be able to recycle those pieces. We'll be releasing a full roadmap once Kickstarter's finished. So obviously, we can guesstimate how well Kickstarter's going to go, but we won't really know the true extent of what we're actually getting from Kickstarter until it's finished. So yeah, we can't really do the roadmap and put a full plan in place until that's confirmed. But when that is confirmed, yes, we will put out a full roadmap. And that will detail what work needs to be completed between now and early access, and what order we'll be doing that work in. So I know that off the top of my head straight away, one of the first things we're doing is we're going to bring people on board to work on the character system and really get that character system fleshed out and polished and a lot less clunky compared to how it is now. But yeah, things like that, all the way up to what does early access look like at this point and how are we going to get there. Thanks, Maz. Yeah, I have moved the mic away. I'm actually using a Logitech headset with just one of them face mics. So, yeah, it is pretty much in my mouth. But I'm looking for a desk mic with a nice bracket that I can use instead. Yeah, right now it's just me doing the development work, and it has been just me for 3 years. But now that we're funded on Kickstarter, we can start bringing more developers on board. So, rather than, well, it will allow me to focus on the things that excite me, like building the ship and building the galaxy, and we can pay people to work on the more of the framework side of things, like the character system and tools and background systems, that kind of thing. Okay, so again, with the construction of the ship, one of the things is cutting it into individual pieces, which become the framework blocks. So, like these bits here, they kind of need separating. So that and that are separate pieces, which means this piece needs the framework pieces lining up, and then it needs a wall around this side as well. So I'll need to work out what the segment length is on that. Because what I tend to do is I'll draw a circle to define that curve, and then I need to divide the circumference of that circle to find out how big each piece needs to be, or what the radius needs to be in order to have a 250 centimeter panel. See if I can define the floor bit first, which means we need E-deck sheet. Okay, so that one's already been cut to size. Okay, and then the walls are going to be the same as D-deck, which means that can be copied down. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, pretty much gone now. I've still got a cough. I mute every time I cough, so you don't have to live with that. But yeah, it's pretty much fixed now. Thanks, Alec, that's appreciated. So I think what I've done with D&E deck is I've probably just copy-pasted that same mesh. This is what happens when you don't work on something for like months at a time, and you go off and do something else. You kind of have to remember what you were doing last time you touched it. So that one is Ring 3 Framework D-deck top. That's E-deck top. Okay, so they were exported as separate objects. So where is it? must have just copied it down and exported it. No matter. That's exactly what I'll do again. Right, so you and you need to be copied around. Okay, so technically, those two blocks should be the same. So we can use the same component for that. And then similarly, so should they be. Okay, so that should give us our complete stairwell all the way down to F deck. Just going to see how that actually connects through to the ring. So there's our floor cavity there, and then going to need, because if that's E deck there, yeah, we're going to need some way on F deck of getting around and then up alongside the ring, because we're going to have an equipment room here. So this is where all the RCS hardware is going to be. So we need that only accessible from the engineering space. So if we've got E deck here, and we'll have some crew quarters along here, then that needs to come up from underneath. So our vision for the interior is very much luxury yacht. So essentially it's a giant luxury yacht in space. But lived in. So obviously there is a crew of human beings living on this ship, so it's not going to be completely sterile. You'll have magazines strewn over tables, the odd cup left here and there, that sort of thing. Yeah, most of this is copy pastable. So like here you've got this framework block with those crew quarters and this one. These will likely end up being identical, so they can just be copy pasted and then mirrored on this side. So this one piece gets used upwards of 8 times across the ship. Yeah, modding's a question we get asked quite a lot, and as you can see, a lot of work goes into the building of these ships, and it wouldn't be impossible to mod that in, but it's not just a case of modelling a pretty ship exterior and throwing it in the game. It has to have a full interior as well, and not just an interior you can walk around, but all of the utilities and the infrastructure and the pipework running through the walls, which actually has to connect up. You're talking a tremendous amount of work. So, I'm not going to sell modders short. I'm sure there will be modders out there who do go to that much effort, but it won't be a straightforward affair. Right, so that's our centre line for the stairs. And that should be 200-ish. Okay, it's 150 there, so 300 in total. So if we were to do the same here, make that 300. So that would be the width of the stairs themselves. Okay, so that gives us a 600, or rather a 6 meter wide middle bit where we can have a planter and some seats and that sort of thing. The stairs are adjacent to the ring, so the ring is purely hardware. So this is the surface area of the interior of the ring support, and that's literally just framework. So there'll be no way of getting up there. Underneath, however, there will be stairs all the way to the bottom, and the central column, which goes down the middle here, will be where all the capacitors and things are housed for the FTL. No, I don't tend to read much in the way of sci-fi these days, or anything at all these days. I'm just so busy with work, I don't have the luxury of reading time. Which is a shame, because I do enjoy reading. So the idea here is I'd like to do a central planter with some seating around it, and then that will have something like that, like a tree growing out of it up the middle, and then there'll be a window, big circular window at the top, which if we turn on that, so we need to cut a window in the ceiling there, which I might do now actually, while we've got that there. Okay, so the effect I'm going for here is from the outside of the ship looking down, you'll see this stairwell spiraling down with planter in the middle, tree up the center. That should look quite cool from the outside. And also if you're doing like an EVA on the hull, you can kind of stand on the edge and look down. Oh, SketchUp's being weird. Ah, Mr. Burr. Nice to see you on board. Yes, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to make that a separate piece so that we get the interior geometry as well. We can hide that, and now we have our solid piece instead. Yeah, SketchUp for ArchViz work is actually really good, and the reason I prefer it over something like Blender per se is because of the speed in which I can get things done. And you know, that's partly my fault because I've never really had the time to sit down and properly learn Blender. I've been using SketchUp for like 10-15 years now, so I'm just so proficient with it. I can just whiz through and get things done. And taking on another tool, especially something like Blender, where you have a lot of keyboard shortcuts to remember, when my old brain is now, you know, locked into the SketchUp way of doing things. Probably in the long term, you know, I'd get things done a lot quicker with Blender, but it's about taking the time to learn it, and in, you know, while I'm going through that learning curve, it will slow me down. Yeah, SketchUp models don't need to have terrible topology. You know, if you take care when modeling, then the topology is fine. But you obviously need to, you know, pay attention to what it is you're doing. You know, something like, obviously this is a very simple shape, but, you know, like something like this. Now, right now, obviously that's an n-gon on top, and you know, when Unreal gets hold of that, the top would be super messy. But there are, you know, ways around that. There are lots of plugins you can use to sanitize the geometry. Like you can go away, not that one. Like you can do that. So now you've got clean geometry for this object, and the same down here. You know, you just hit that, and there we go. Now we've got perfectly clean geometry, all quads. You know, you can use that for sub D now or anything else, and you do the same with that. So yeah, SketchUp doesn't have to produce horrible geometry. If you use the right plugins, and I think that's the point. You need to use a lot of plugins to do what you want to do with SketchUp. Thank you, Mr. Brian. That's very appreciated, and I love the name. Right, so what did I call that lid? Right, that's you. So that's this piece, and so that's ring 3 framework C-deck wings sheet. Okay, so file, export 3D model, and we don't want it in our documents folder, we want it in here. So Starship Simulator, modeling, Magellan class, ring 3. So that's ring 3 framework C-deck wings sheet. Obviously there's a lot of pieces, and keeping track of the naming conventions is always fun. So as simple as that, this object has now been transferred from SketchUp into Unreal Engine, and there it is, just like that, done. One thing that is always good to do, however, which gets undone every time you import it, so I generally don't do it till the end, but if you go into the normals, and then you just do the face weighted normals, which it does automatically, or you can do the angle weighting depending on the complexity of the mesh, but that just gives you nice sharp face weighted edges. And now this piece needs to be a different piece. So this one, one's going to be ring 3, because we're on the third corridor ring across. So that is D-deck. So ring 3, framework, D-deck. It's the top section, so we're going to call that wings. And then this one similarly. So this one's ring 3 framework E-deck wings top. And then that one is the sheet, so that would be ring 3 framework E-deck wings sheet. Thank you for the $5 Canadian, Nadru. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Nadru. This game really makes me wonder what these studios with hundreds of people and even bigger budgets are doing during development cycles. Yeah, probably more than what I'm doing on my own. I think that's almost a guarantee. But yeah, it's I think the problem when you have a large studio, and I think this is true for any business, the more people you have, the less agile you are as an organization, and the more busy work that ends up going on, within that organization. When you're a small studio, you can be extremely agile, and the individual contribution from a single person is more valuable when you have less people. So what a single person does becomes a lot more obvious when you have less people. I think it's kind of that sort of thing. My computer is it's an i7 with a 2080 Ti and 32 gig of RAM. It's about 6 years old now, if not longer. It likes to blue screen about 3 times a week for the fun of it, so yeah, getting that replaced will be one of the first things I do. Although, as I've stated before on previous streams, I definitely advocate for developing on a really low spec machine, because the lower the spec your development machine is, the more honest you have to be as a developer, because you really feel any performance deficits within your game. Because if I had a 4090 and an i9 and 64 gig of RAM and everything always ran perfect, then I'm not feeling the performance issues of the game because it runs fine for me, so I don't notice these things. But running on a lower spec system, if it's performing poorly, you feel it and you're more inclined to do something about it. At least that's how it works for me, anyway. Thanks, Neju. Thanks, Flame. Wow, $42 for US. How much are kebabs in the US? Jeez. I feel like I'm missing some framework here. Is it that? Ah, yeah, there we go. Thought something was missing. Right, so that piece and that piece need to go away. Okay, and then the top piece here, that also needs to be gone. Tech side, I love this game, thank you. I do as well, actually. I think it's quite cool. I think it's sorry, my CPU is an i7 7200, I think. Hang on. What is it? Oh yeah, 8700 there. It's yeah, it was pretty decent in its day. These days it's getting a bit old. Although I don't have any issues with it. I mean, I can run Starship Simulator around about 90 FPS in games, so yeah, I don't have any problems with the likes of Star Citizen or anything like that. So it's still plenty good enough for me. What was I doing? Yes, importing stuff. That's what I was doing. Right, so if we go find the right folder, so ring 3 meshes. Right, so we need to import some new meshes. So Magellan class ring 3. So we've got a wing sheet and wing top there, and wings sheet and top there. Oh, no, not that one. Those ones. Oh, hang on, I've exported 2 there. I think that one was unnecessary. So we'll just import these 2. Oops, no, don't want to delete them. I want to open them. So this is just the raw export from SketchUp, and then all I do is I go into here, and there's only one material slot because it's a simple mesh. And same here, just add the framework material, and then for now I'm just doing complex collision as simple. And all that's doing is that's just using the nanite fallback mesh as the collision mesh. I will do custom collisions for them eventually once they're finalized and I know exactly what's where, then I'll give them their own custom collisions, but that will do for now. Let's keep them on hand for a minute. Okay, and then we just need to go find them in here again. So we've got wing top for E deck. Drag that one in. Of course, that needs to be on the right level as well. So that's framework top, so that's that one. So we'll just hit Control M on that just to make it part of the right level. And then we will copy that across and mirror it. Oops, no, we didn't want to do that. We want to unclick that and do that. So now that object is mirrored, and we will rotate it 180 degrees. That one even. There we go. Right, so that's that in as our framework top. And then we need to do the same for D-Deck. So we just do framework D-Deck top. And then we insert the D-Deck version of that. So that one. Plonk that there. Duplicate it. Rotate it by 180 degrees. And mirror it on that axis. Okay. Getting there. So apparently I already did the sheet metal for the top. Andrew, thank you again. I have an i7-8700 in my PC with an RTX 3060. Also, how many old gift cards I am going to find lying around when I think we still have one more somewhere? Yes. I think Claire's on a 3060, or is it a 3050? But yeah, it does a really good job, and it wasn't even that expensive actually, the 3050. You can pick them up for less than £200. Alex, no, things like bolts and stuff are are not oriented to the world origin. The only thing I'm sticking at world origin is the framework pieces. So all of these, they have their origin point at the world origin, and that's simply for ease of construction. Things like wall panels and stuff, and everything else don't use the world origin. They have their own origin point. So like this, for example, you can see that it's got its own origin. I had a question actually the other day. Someone was asking, why don't we use Datasmith for exporting out of SketchUp? And that is very much the reason, because with Datasmith, every single mesh has the same world origin as its origin point, and also every single mesh is a separate mesh. It's awful. It's fine for ArchViz or something like a render, but for game dev, yeah, Datasmith is not good. At least not what I've found. Yeah, it's not really best practice to have things use the world origin as their origin point, but for what we're using it for, it just makes sense, because I can just quickly pop in the framework mesh, and because these will have sockets all over them, it means that the individual wall panels just click into place, and it just speeds up the process. Right, so I just need to go through now and do that same job on this side. So we've just done D-Deck, and we're still on D-Deck, so we'll just copy those 180 degrees around, and then stick ourselves on the E-Deck level, slow my mouse down a bit, you and you, and we rotate that about 180 degrees. So now we've got our mirrored sides. So what needs to happen here with these now is we need a nice window structure to go over the top of that. That won't just be like open glass, it'll have some kind of, perhaps almost like a spiderweb type shape to it on top. And then it should be visible from inside here. Oh, almost. Yeah, you should be able to just about see it from the bridge. There's one thing that I really like with Starship designs. It's when you can see the outer hull detail from within the ship. If you've got, say, like an airplane, like a tube, and you look out the window and you can't see any ship because it's on a curved surface, I don't find that very rewarding visually. I love to be able to just look out and see hull and see the ship around you. So yeah, that should look quite cool once it's done, I think. True. Yeah, if you can't see the wings on a plane, something's gone wrong. Right, let's see if I can sort out those two inside bits as well. So we need... So this piece would be... So that's ring 3 framework, D-Deck walls. So that's wing walls. And you can see the pain of exporting some of these objects, because the ones that have a lot of polys take forever to export as an object file. Thank you, TechSide. if you can't afford the super chats, then stop doing super chats. David Spalding, thank you. Great job. I haven't noticed. Do we have common orative plaques on the command deck? It'd be fun to write our own. There will be a dedication plaque in the park area at the front of the ship. So all of the Admiral level backers will be on that dedication plaque. And because we have quite a few, I'm probably going to make like a hollow display that lists all the names, just sort of slowly scrolling past. Can I move? No, I can't move. Hang on, when that's finished exporting, I'll show you. I'm going to hopefully put bridge wings on the bridge. So like a modern naval vessel, the bridges have wings that stick out the side of the bridge so that you've got sort of rear visibility. So something, along those lines. Maybe even like with a real vessel, having RCS controls available in the bridge wings as well. Because I know that with a naval ship, they've got like a little joystick in the bridge wing, so they can do docking maneuvers from the wing rather than from the helm. Yeah, and this particular vessel won't be landing anywhere. It's way too big, and it's got a giant ring around it, so yeah, it can't land. But it will have a fleet of shuttles. Yeah, so the park area on the ship is going to be at the front here. If I turn on the D-deck layout, you can see it a bit better. So where this wall curves across, this area here is going to be the Arboretum, and then this area at the front is going to be the park. And if I just get rid of that a minute. And that as well. So it's going to be 2 decks tall. So this entire front cavity here is all going to be park, and then sort of somewhere prominently in the middle we will have a little water feature with a hollow display which will have all the admirals' names on it, which I think is going to look quite cool. And this side is going to be the medical bay, and the medical bay will have windows overlooking the park, which I think is going to look quite cool. Let me just export this one as well. So that's E-deck. E-deck wing walls. Yeah, the shuttles on the ship will be obviously in a much smaller scale, but yeah, they'll have their own engineering systems. So they'll have their own power plant and cabling, and they'll be just as simulated as the main ship is. Why am I making the ship bigger? Yeah, so the original design, which was pretty much just a saucer, it was a lot wider than the ship is now, so in order to put the ring around it, I actually made it narrower by about 2 whole rings worth of hull. because putting a ring around what is essentially a disc just looked stupid. It needed to be stretched out in order for it to look sleek and nice. Because if you imagine, these front and backside bits weren't there, then putting a ring around a disc where the ring is the same diameter as the disc, it just doesn't look very good at all. The ring just completely overpowers the design. So stretching it out fore and aft just refines the design of the ship and just makes it sleeker and nicer. And it also had the added benefit of just giving us a bit more room on the interior for things like sick bay, shuttle bay, and various other sort of city centre type areas. But yeah, the original ship was about this wide, so the saucer section has got a lot smaller, but then there's a lot more, both fore and aft of it as well. Yeah, once all the nose section is built up, this should look quite sleek and nice. And I'm not entirely happy with the whole design because it is going to be quite sort of flat and square from the side. It looks great from the top, but from the side, I wish it was slightly more angled. But I'm kind of restricted by this curve here, so the curve of this section goes all the way around the front, and that's kind of unavoidable really, just because of the shape of the ring and the fact that I've moulded it in like this. But we'll see. Once it's got hull plating on it and it's got windows and all that, it will probably look better. So with planetary landings, how will the game work if some players land on a planet and some take the ship to another planet in the same system? So that shouldn't be a problem because we're going to have different contexts for each player. So when you're on this ship or any main ship that we make, everything you see out the window is relative to this ship's position in space. When you get in a shuttle, you're teleported seamlessly to a static shuttle interior. So then what you see out of the window is then relative to where that shuttle is in space. So that shuttle can then go and fly off somewhere completely separate to the main ship, and what they see out of the window is relevant to where they are. And similarly, if you then go down to a planetary surface, then you are on a static planetary surface, and people on the main ship, which is also static in space. So this never actually moves anywhere. We move space around the ship. So you can have people on the ship, you can have people on the planet, and they're just in separate static environments with space being relative to where they are. You could even have a different set of crew on an entirely different planet, and that would just be rendered again as another layer of physical space. So the way we're going to do this is, say this ship is here, vertically, then all the way down below it somewhere we'll have another static interior for a shuttle, and then maybe another, like 2 kilometers or so below that, we'll have another static shuttle interior, and then all the way down below that we'll have a planetary surface which is being generated, and we'll just stack that vertically, and we'll have slots reserved for generating static interiors. So it could be a space station, it could be a shuttle, it could be a planetary surface, and we'll just stack those interior environments vertically below the ship, and they'll be far enough down that they won't render. So if you look out of the window on the ship, you won't see them. If we were to turn off the code which catches the player when they jump off the ship, then you could literally jump down to a planetary surface by jumping off the edge of the ship. But obviously we don't want that, so we'll have mechanisms in place to stop that from happening. But that's essentially, how we'll do it behind the scenes. Yeah, we won't need loading screens for things like shuttles and stations, because we'll simply have a portal, like the game portal. So when you go through the portal, you're entering that new environment, and it should be seamless to the player. You might notice a subtle lighting change or something like that, but it will be practically seamless. It's different when going from a static shuttle interior to what will be a moving shuttle interior on a planetary surface, because when you're in space, space is moving around the static interior of whatever you're in, but when you're on the surface itself needs to be static, so the thing you're in needs to be moving. And because we're making that context change, that's when we need to do the brief transition / loading screen to transition the player between those two contexts. So when you leave the ship, fly off to a space station, and then board that space station, there shouldn't be any loading screens, because we'll be doing that through portals. We just can't use a portal for planetary surfaces. You will see the ship when you leave the shuttle. So when you fly out of the shuttle bay, or in fact from the very point you get in the ship, the ship you see out of the window from the shuttle won't be the actual ship. It'll be a proxy of that ship. It'll still look the same, and you can fly around it and it will look like your ship, but it won't be the static version of your ship. It'll be a mobile version that doesn't have an interior. And you'll see an interior where the windows are, but that's the only thing. Beyond that, it won't have all the stuff that the static ship has. Yeah, so it's essentially, you can't move stuff unless you have a mobile physics state. So like with Star Citizen, they have localized physics grids for their ships. So the actual physics state moves around with their ships, which is why you can run and jump and have physics objects on the vessels in Star Citizen. But we don't have that tech in Unreal Engine, and probably couldn't afford to make that tech in Unreal Engine. So we're stuck with static interiors. And I don't know this for sure, but I'm just hazarding a guess that this is why Elite Dangerous doesn't have walkable ship interiors, because they'd have a similar problem where right now, when you're locked into a cockpit, you are the thing that's moving around space. If you could also walk around your cockpit whilst flying around space, now you need something like physics grids that are localized to the ship, and that's a whole engine development that I don't think that they have right now. So that's probably why you can't do that in Elite, and you can do that in Star Citizen, and why you won't be able to do it in our game. So static interiors means you have to move space, but because you're moving space, you can't do seamless planetary landings. So that there has to be a give and take somewhere. Jacob, thank you for the $5. Sorry if you answered me earlier and I missed it, but could you add a lift to the reactor room? Yeah, so the reactor room, as it stands right now, if I zoom through the ship, we do want a lift in here, and I'm thinking probably here at the back, just to go up to all the different levels, or doing away with these little platforms that stick out and literally having a circular ring that can go up and down so that you can perform maintenance on the reactor and access, take cargo up and down. Because we want every piece of the reactor to be breakable and repairable, and it would make more sense from a practical perspective if there was a moving platform that allowed you access, to those various components, rather than just having to lean over and unscrew something from here. So I will be looking into that when we do our final our final polish on the reactor design and the reactor room design and all of that. Yes, a good question about EVAs and repairing things on the outer hull. So what we'll probably do is, whereas with a shuttle, you are completely separate from the main ship and you can fly off and go somewhere else, we'll have it so that things like the repair craft are tied to the ship, not via a physical cable or anything, but just logically. It won't let you fly away from the ship, which means they are part of the static environments. So you could fly out to somewhere like over here, and it means when the ship moves, you are dragged around with the ship when it's moving, and you won't be able to get further away than this from the ship, so that you can still go outside, fly around, repair things, yank out the field coils and replace these, without us having to replace the ship model with a hollow version. And yeah, the ship does have its own gravity anyway, so we could explain that away in the lore, or even just a power thing, so that the power and the comms are all tied into the ship, so you can't fly it away. Right, I was replacing these, wasn't I? So we need to import. So it was D-deck wing walls and E-deck wing walls. So same process as before, and there's a couple of material channels here which I need to get rid of. That one was weld line, so steel framework weld line, and that one was just steel framework. So we should have some visible welds on here. Should have at least. Why is that not coming up? Interesting. And this one, I think, was the back faces. Have a look at where that came from. I think that's a test material I did somewhere. Little things like this you need to get rid of, because even though I'm not adding a material to it, because it's a materials slot, that's an extra draw call, so that needs tidying up. And again, on the collisions, we need complex as simple. And the same with this one. So we've got a steel frame. We've got a weld line. Ignore that one. Complex is simple. Right, so then that and that can get deleted. That and that can get deleted. Same over here. Okay, and now we can re-import those as their correct object. So go to DDEC framework walls. DDEC wing walls. Pop that in there. Yeah, so that needs to be 180 and -1. And then both of them just need to go 180. And then the same again for EDEC. So the reason I'm doing this on separate layers is so that I can turn those layers off as needed. So that one, so pop that one in there. 180 -1. Spin it round. Yeah, so what I can do is sort of layer by layer, I can turn off different bits of the ship like this. Which helps when just laying things out and, you know, kind of making sense of the space as you're working on it. Okay, so there's all the top pieces. And there's our walls. So there's a small change that needs to happen here. So these pieces, in fact I might go ahead and do that now. These all need to get rotated by 45 degrees. Like that. Because now we've got, in terms of sort of getting around the ship, we've got a stairwell here, actually no, sorry, that needed to go even further than that. That's it, yeah, so that's it. So the stairwells are split up, so you've got a stairwell, a stairwell, a stairwell. So there's lots of ways of getting up between those two decks. And also it splits up the visible distance that you can see. So like here, there's no point where you can see too far. So like this, it's like the furthest distance you can see with inside the ship, which we can keep things like culling manageable. Because what you don't want is like to be able to see from here all the way down here, because then you're having to load those objects for all that distance. Right, and then this one needs to be unique, because that needs to just be a wall across there, so I might actually just make that into a bathroom there. So we'll keep the crew quarters as they are. Just make that into a bathroom, and then that works with the stairwell. Yeah, not every stairwell will have a lift, so these ones will. They'll probably have, like the like the VIP lounge, we'll just have the lift up the middle and the staircase going around it. There's no reason why we couldn't do that here as well. Just for aesthetic reasons, I really wanted to do that planter with the tree going up the middle. Yeah, the ship will eventually have simulated air. Oh look, there's Steve. Hi Steve, why are you hovering in midair? Why has your texture disappeared? r.streaming.pool size 4 meg. There we go. Streaming pool. 4 gig rather. Yeah, he's quite happy just floating away there in space. That would probably explain where my weld line went. Oh yeah, it was the streaming pool. That's why the welds went away. Let's save all that before my computer decides to randomly blue screen on me. Yeah, Steve will eventually have friends and a homeworld of his own. Which has to be Zeta Reticuli, surely. Alright, so that's D-deck where it should be, so also need to do the same for E-deck. Yeah, so again, these two are going to have a joining piece in the middle. Yes, Reaverblade, there's a lot of copy paste going on. So like all of these pieces here are the same physical mesh as exported from SketchUp, which is copy pasted and mirrored in some cases. But sometimes there are edge cases like here where it does need an extra wall put in. And there's a lot of floor detail that needs sorting out here as well. So like this is actually the top of what's down there. So these are sort of in the wrong place. Or at least that's certainly in the wrong place. Yeah, there's a couple of bits here in the wrong place actually, but I will be fixing those as I go sort of top to bottom, working my way through the ship. Because again, we've got these gaps that need filling now because everything's been moved down a little bit. Okay. Yeah, so the new dev build should... There's no reason why I can't put a dev build out now, to be perfectly honest with you. The reason I was holding off before is because the sensors was quite broken. But they're much further along now, and you can at least navigate the ship again. So, yeah, I could do a dev build right now. But in terms of people who've backed on Kickstarter getting access to those dev builds, we need to wait until Kickstarter has completed and they've sent us the spreadsheet with all the people that have confirmed payments and that sort of thing. And then we'll go through that list, give people their Discord roles, and then put out dev build access, which will be password protected for the backers. In an ideal world, we wanted to do it with keys, but Steam only give you 2,000 keys, and we have way more backers than that, so we're going to use password control instead to access dev builds. Yeah, we will update to Unreal 5.4 at some point. Obviously, not immediately. I never update immediately when a new engine build comes out. I like to make sure it's bedded in a little bit first. Yeah, and I think 5.4, from what I've seen, it's more sort of virtual production stuff, animations, new rigging controls, that sort of thing. It does have support for PCG biomes, which will be benefiting us when we do planetary landings, but we're many months away from getting to that point, so by the time we actually work on planetary landings properly, 5.4 will have been out a long time ago. We might even be on 5.5 by then. And the only thing I'm hoping for with 5.4 is that things like nanite and virtual shadows will just have performance optimizations. Because as good as nanite is, it does have quite a high baseline cost. Okay, so the question with this staircase is, do we go for a single spiral all the way around, or do we have it as a double? I think the reason I went to the wall on this side is because I was actually planning to do double stairs. Let's have a look a minute. Yeah, because if we did something like that, so that would become the landing. Then we'd have similar on this side. So then the stairs would actually be this bit here. Which means this bit would be just walk space. Yep, we do the modelling in SketchUp. And again, because SketchUp's for architectural design, and most of what we're doing for the ships and everything is ArchViz work. So SketchUp's just, it makes sense to use it for that sort of thing. Let's see how many steps we're going to need for this. So if we do, let's just do 12 to begin with. So from there to there, and then from there to there. That kind of will come down there like that. Not like that. That's better. Yeah, so we had something kind of like that. Which I'll obviously tidy up. Yeah, so if I did it that way, we'd have to have something like that. But is that what you mean by double helix? Yeah, then like a tree or something up the middle. Something like that, anyway. Yeah, rate my tree. Is that not the best tree you've ever seen? Yeah, there's another deck here. Yeah, so even using this amount of space for like the landing area, we've still got this really horrible tight gap here. So I think this will have to be a smaller staircase. Let's have to move it round, maybe. Let's hide my amazing tree a minute. Let's put the other side in a sec. Oh, the component axes are the wrong way round. Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll just make it smaller, so you still got this walkway here, because that's uncomfortably close to the wall. I could just make the wall bigger, to be honest, but I have plans out here. So on these side bits here, I don't know why, but ever since I first kind of envisioned this, I've loved the idea of having a handrail going around the FTL pit that goes down there, the pit of doom. And for access fore and aft when you're doing EVAs, to be along this little covered passage. It just seems to have a nice feel to it. It's got that nice sort of outdoors on a spaceship kind of feel. So I can't really push this wall out any further because it's going to get in the way of having this covered walkway here. So yeah, I think just giving us a bit more breathing room on this side, I think is all that's needed. Yeah, that's it. It's the back porch. You can come over here and kind of lean on the railing and bask in the glow of the FTL coil when it's online. Breathe in that Hawking radiation. Yeah, this is the closest thing we're going to have to a pit of doom. And in engine it looks like this. Let me turn on that. That. And that. Yeah, it's kind of this area here. So you've got that kind of pit going down there, which you really don't want to jump down. But yeah, we've got detailed hull plating, a nice railing around it. I think that's going to be quite a cool area. Yeah, I think ragdolling down there is probably one of the first things I'm going to do. If you do it right, you could probably jump down here, grab onto one of these heat sinks, and ride it all the way back up, and then jump off. That sounds like a challenge to me. Yeah, well, this side's going to glow red because this is literally a heat sink on this side. So these are the actual FTL coils themselves. So these guys are going to be sort of crackling with plasma. So it's going to be that kind of bluish purplish hue, all crackling away with like lightning and stuff around them. Like the hover pads in the Nebuchadnezzar from Matrix. That sort of crackliness going on. And then on this side, where the heat sinks are, these are going to sort of glow a deep red colour when they get hot. So yeah, you probably wouldn't want to stand here when it's running. Yeah, I actually turned off the rings spinning. I wasn't quite sure just how much of a performance impact that was having, but they do spin. Did I turn it off? I think I might have done. Yeah, I need to do some profiling on the performance of that just to assess the viability. I mean, I wasn't noticing any slowdown with the ring spinning, but each one of these coils is a separate component, so I'm sure it's having some impact somewhere. so next up, that needs some sort of landing areas built. I'll make that a bit smaller. And then the next thing I need to do is start building out these edge pieces here so that they have the proper separation of framework bits. That needs thickening, so it's not just a single sheet with just a back face on it. Then I need to start building in this corridor here, and then I can start cutting out all these pieces as well. So this is going to be the weapons room here, by the way, so that's why we've got this like AAA quality turret. So the magazine for the railgun will be in here, all the capacitor banks will be in here, and there's going to be a turret both above and below the hull, and they'll both be managed by the same room, so you've got one on each side. I haven't quite worked out where the aft turrets are going to go yet, because obviously we're going to have engine pods at the back, and it doesn't seem to matter where you put them, something gets in the way and you'll end up shooting your own ring or your engines. So I'll see if I can find somewhere practical to put the weapons at the back. But at the very least it's going to have 4 turrets at the front. Okay, well I think I'm going to call it there for tonight, because it's been almost 2.5 hours and I need to go and stretch my legs and have a cup of tea. So I shall leave you in the glory of my incredibly detailed tree. And thank you once again everyone for joining the stream, and I shall be streaming again on Sunday at the usual time of 8 PM BST, and we'll be doing either some more modelling or more coding on the ship itself, depending on how far I get with those sensors. But we shall see how much I can get done this week. It's been so busy with Kickstarter, and we've had just an endless amount of comments, emails, questions. It's been absolutely crazy. So I haven't had a lot of time to get in engine and actually do things. But things do seem to be quieting down a little bit now, so it's enabling me to get more done. So hopefully, come Sunday, I'll have some more progress to report. But until then, thank you once again, and I shall catch you again on the next stream. Bye for now.